moving on from the NFL, we'll go to college football. Talking about how Ohio State lost to Michigan, Michigan State. They lost 17-14 on a late field goal with time expired, and it kind of garners the question: was Ohio State overrated? Because there's so many games this season where Ohio State didn't look like the team that went on to beat Wisconsin, that beat Alabama, and eventually went on to win the championship from last year. But people were giving them that championship nod, or giving that championship status, just because they were the champions, so they were respecting them and they were undefeated. But then when you actually look at the quality of some of their games that they played, you're like, well, were they overrated? And then you start to see dissension in the locker room when Ezekiel Elliott comes out, and he did apologize for his comments. And as Urban Meyer went on to say when he addressed it, he came to see me. He's great, and he apologized. Urban Meyer said he's been a good student, he's loyal, and he's selfless, and it's just been an emotional week. Obviously, we don't condone that, and we don't encourage it. So pretty much surmising about how Ezekiel Elliott went on about the coaching staff and the play calling. He said that this was Ezekiel Elliott's exact comments. He said, "I deserve more than 11 carries. I really do. I can't speak for the play caller. I don't know what's going on." He went on to say, and this is per Dan Wolken of USA Today. He went on to say that the coaching staff didn't put us in position to win, and that's via Rick Pizzo of the Big Ten Network, and that's a team in Michigan State we should have beat. So do y'all think that this loss kind of has sort of, kind of ruffled the feathers in the Ohio State locker room? Because, Ezekiel Elliott wasn't lying. This man's a Heisman candidate, and yet you only get him 12 rushing attempts for 33 yards. And JT Barrett leads your team in rushing attempts with 15, who's their quarterback. So do y'all think that, Urban Meyer kind of coached his way out of his team into losing this game? Do y'all think it's on him? And then what do y'all think the current status of the locker room? Khalid, we'll start off with you. What do you think?
I do think that excuse me. I do think that the play calling did have a lot to do with it. One of your star running backs in Ezekiel Elliott, and he's only getting 11 carries during this game, and he, like you said, he's a Heisman candidate. He's supposed to be going off right now. He's supposed to be making big plays, and then you can't get the ball to him as many times as he should. I do understand that he definitely needs and deserves as many carries as he should if he plays at such a high level. But I do think that this team is a little bit overrated. They definitely lost some pieces from last year because they lost Tim Beck. Who they lost Tom Herman. So they lost Tom Herman, and he was replaced by Tim Beck. And not to mention, they got all this tension in the locker room. Their offense is dissipating a little bit, and then the people are pointing out all these wrong offensive play calling and all this criticism in the locker room. I think it did ruffle the feathers, and it's kind of definitely shaking up the foundation of the team, and making Ohio State look kind of very sloppy.
All right, let me ask you one quick question before I get to Rashad. So, how much of it do you think it falls on the shoulders of Urban Meyer? Because think about it, it doesn't seem like there were really any complaints out of the Ohio State locker room until they lost. So do you think it really was a big deal in the locker room, and how much do you think that goes on Urban Meyer in the loss, and then how, just how it seems right immediately after the loss, Cardale Jones and Ezekiel Elliott declared for NFL. What do you think about that?
I think that it does have Urban Meyer does take some of the blame for this, but I think this loss definitely oh, bless you.
Thank you.
Definitely allowed Ezekiel Elliott and
Cardale
Jones to speak out, because they have a reason to speak out about how they're feeling and stuff like that, and they kind of want to shift the blame over to Urban Meyer a little bit. But it does have something to do with the play calling, but also you gotta work with your team better, and y'all can't have this tension in the locker room and stuff like that, and then you want to just put it on the shoulders of Urban Meyer, and you gotta take some of the blame of yourself.
All right, what do you think, Rashad?
One, this team isn't overrated. They had close games even last year when they won the national championship. So how can we sit here and say a team who was undefeated, who's defending national champions, undefeated, and lost a close one to Michigan State, who's actually one of the top teams for the BCS playoffs? So, well, they were. So how can we sit here and say they're over it because they lost to a good team 17-13 for 17-14 by field goal, when, like you said, they didn't give Ezekiel Elliott the ball, who is one of the top 3 running backs in the nation right now. Didn't give him the ball. Quarterback, we've seen the quarterback play this whole year has been wishy-washy. Neither one has been great, to fully be the complete starter between Cardale Jones and JT Barrett. They lost Devin Smith, who was our star receiver last year, so that took a lot of big plays away. But they had Braxton Miller, but Braxton Miller isn't as aggressive as Devin Smith was as a receiver. So they're not overrated. Their weapons aren't as strong as they were, but they're still not overrated because they were still undefeated until they lost the games to this Michigan State team, which if they didn't lose, they would still be in the BCS playoffs. Basically, they'll still be number 3 possibly behind Alabama and Clemson. So no, I can't say this team's overrated. And for Cardale Jones and Ezekiel Elliott, I think it's bad for the locker room for them to declare now after a loss. But at the same time, frustrated players, I mean, basically they know their college playoff chances is over. So now it's just playing for a bowl game, which basically in their eyes is a failure of a season. You know what I mean? Because you're defending national champions, your expectation to make it back. Anything less than that is a failure. So in their eyes, they failed. So, but I don't think this team's overrated.
All right, so let me from the perspective of those who think the team is overrated. This is what some will say when they kind of will make the case of the team being overrated. Because I mean, some of their wins, like they had a close game against Indiana, 34-27.
But if you look at that, Indiana was 3-1 at the time.
They beat Illinois, they beat Minnesota. It's just people are looking at the quality of their ones. Yeah, they were undefeated, but some people are looking at the quality of some of the teams they beat and are like, well, hey, I mean, if you look at, I mean, Minnesota, Illinois, Indiana, Western Michigan, some people will say that, a good portion of their wins came against teams that are here.
But can you do the same thing with last year's schedule? They didn't play anybody really either that year, but no one really said anything about that. Maybe it's because they're champions now, but look at this is last year. They lost to Virginia Tech, an ACC school. That's normally known for good football, but lately hasn't been that great. They played Cincinnati. They blew them out. They blew Maryland out. They blew Rutgers out. You see the teams I'm naming? They won in overtime against Penn State, which is actually a good program. Michigan State actually won by more than a touchdown last season. Minnesota, Indiana again, and then Michigan, like they always play.
Yeah.
So you see, their schedule wasn't as strong as it was. Well, their schedule is the same basically as last year as this year. So why can't we can't really say, oh, they had an easy road. I mean, yeah, but some of those games they struggled. They clearly see they struggled here too.
You got something to say?
Yeah, I want to make a comment what Rashad was talking about. It's also what he was saying. He said that because they're champions now, they are definitely held to a higher standard. And and if every game they ain't blowing out the team that they're playing, people are gonna think, oh, they're not as good as they were back then, or they're not really the championship team we thought they were.
But it's not always about blowing a team out.
Exactly.
Sometimes you're.
No, he's saying he's leaning the way of your case. He's saying that the reason why people are saying it's overrated because they're not
blowing out teams like that.
But what I will also say to you guys on that point is, you guys got to also realize last season they were playing with backup quarterbacks. That Braxton Miller got hurt, so people were giving Ohio State, slight because they were like, oh, well, you're playing with JT Barrett, and then JT Barrett gets hurt, and then you end up playing Cardale Jones in. So they're giving it, but this year they had all their horses healthy, all their quarterbacks healthy, ready to go, and then they still
the same thing. I mean, technically,
it's not.
They're still backups.
I mean, they're not. I mean, Cardale Jones started at one point. Then you start JT Barrett. I mean, they all could be starting quarterbacks, and but we only saw that they all could be starting quarterbacks after Braxton Miller got hurt last year, and then JT Barrett came in and played. Then he got hurt, and then so on with Cardale Jones. But now that this year comes in, you're like, okay, you guys have all these weapons. So team, now that people know what your team can do and they see what your team has the ability to do, they're like, oh, you have all these weapons. You have Cardell. You have a running / passing quarterback in JT Barrett / Cardell Jones. Cardell Jones gives you the deep ball threat, all this. JT Barrett gives you the running threat and all that. And you still have Braxton Miller, who was a Big Ten offensive player of the year candidate, I think, a year ago. So you have them, but then you see the offense has been very underwhelming this year. And I mean, granted, but they also have stripped away, because Ezekiel Elliott isn't getting as many carries as he was last year.
He was a big factor of everything they did.
He was, and he's not getting as many carries as he was last year because they've been putting the ball in the hands of the quarterbacks who were supposedly supposed to be these great star quarterbacks. And now that when you see the offense isn't performing, people are like, well, maybe they were overrated, because when you see the quality of some of their wins, people are wondering, because when you have to make a quarterback change in the middle, because that was one of the reasons why people were kind of wondering how Urban Meyer was going to handle this whole 3 quarterback thing. I mean, obviously Braxton Miller goes out to become a wide receiver, but then you still have JT Barrett and Cardell Jones, where sometimes you're playing like what is the thing with the slot machines that you it's like in and out. I can't, but you're inevitably you're pretty much putting one quarterback in for like pretty much you're putting one quarterback in first half, another quarterback in second half, and you don't really let any quarterback get comfortable in their flow route. JT Barrett has been the captain of this team. I mean, I'm pretty sure that not starting the whole season can affect your play, because I mean he didn't start until about halfway through the season. So when you put him in that position, then you keep putting him and Cardell Jones, pulling him in, both of them in and out. And then when JT Barrett gets suspended, then you're forced to put Cardell Jones in. You don't really build continuity with your team. Mm-hmm. So many people were like, "Oh, this offense isn't what we thought it would be or what it could be." And then it's like then like Rashad said, Michigan State is a good team that they lost to. But then a lot of people are wondering, well, was their undefeated record, also a quality of, or also a factor of some of the teams they played. Whereas last season they got the benefit of the doubt because they actually were playing with quarterbacks they weren't exactly experienced with. But